Every agency has those moments that just go right. The lead that gets contacted, quoted, and sold without any issue, the service ticket that just simply gets resolved without any hiccups. Those don't happen by accident. They're moments that are created from workflows that have efficiently ran your agency for years and years. And as we think about automation, we don't have to think about this in a manner that's something drastically different than the things that have created for success within your agency. On the days that we can call the good day, that things just happen to go right, the goal is that we need to capture those good day moments and reflect them into a technical system through automation that helps us when bad days strike, that things don't fall through the crack and things get missed. Our goal in this video is to walk through that concept, and at the end I'll show you a tool that we've put out through EffiZoom that will help you as you think through this process to design your systems and your concepts to capture what actually works on those good days and then translate that into an automation system within AgencyZoom or even other CRMs to help you implement that in your agency as you look to move into the future and grow. Before we actually get to the tool, though, let's take just a few minutes and kind of step through the thought process that is what delivers us to the point of being able to leverage the tool to truly understand how to capture those good days and translate them into a workflow within our CRM that we can use. So as you think about those good days, something that is always going to stick out is that lead comes in, the CSR gathers all the information that they need right there on the first pass. It goes directly to the producer who quotes it, calls the customer back, and ultimately sells that policy, and everything goes perfectly throughout that sequence and nothing falls through the cracks. We can apply the same concept as we think about maybe a service scenario where somebody needs to make a new endorsement or add a driver. Request comes in and it just flows through the process seamlessly and doesn't have any issue. On the flip side of that is really the other days or the bad days. It's the same customer. Different person maybe is the person that takes the call, the inbox is full, or just normal chaos that can exist within an agency that we've all experienced. And on those other days, sometimes things just don't flow smoothly. As we think about automation, we've got to realize that the difference in that good day and that bad day is that it's really not a people problem. It's a systems problem. We've got to make sure that we capture those good days and implement those into systems that allow for our team to flow through a lead coming in to a point of being sold with a few touch points that support them along the way. As we think about that good day, something that we've got to acknowledge is it already exists within the agency. You got to this point today because you were successful and incredibly good at doing what you do, which is selling policies. It's probably just not happening every single day. Maybe it happens once a week, maybe it's once a month, but the automation's job is not to redesign the way that your sales or service process works. It's simply to take a moment to think through how that process works and capture some touch points that you can automate that empower your team to actually flow through the steps in a more effective manner to still achieve the exact same outcome that we sought to achieve, regardless of whether we had automation in place or not. What we're going to talk through, if you can describe that good day scenario where it flowed from intake to bound without any issues, you can build the automation as we go through this sequence of thinking. So what we're going to actually do is we're just going to walk it back and think about one of those scenarios where it went really smoothly. And then we're going to start taking down how that transition from intake to outbound or intake to sold. And that is what we're actually going to apply some touch points to. So with any of these scenarios that we've talked about, the very first thing that's going to initiate this is going to be a trigger. So when you think about your automations in AgencyZoom, that very first stage is that trigger stage. It's whatever initiated it to take place within the agency. So we'll use an example that maybe somebody called in, talked to a CSR, and wanted to buy homeowners insurance. That's your trigger. The phone call that somebody picked up manually within the agency is the trigger that started that. And now we've got to capture what happens next. So on the good day, I would argue that in most cases, that CSR takes that call when they say, hey, I want to get homeowners insurance. They begin that process of gathering the information that's going to be necessary to quote that. So they're going to get their personal information. They're going to get all of the relevant information about the house. And then depending on how the agency is made up, they're either going to begin that quoting process through the rater or initially pass that off to a producer to quote and sell that policy. So once that comes in, if we're doing our job and what we want to accomplish within the business, most of the time that CSR is probably going to shoot an email or a text to that customer saying, "Hey, got your stuff ready. We're working on getting the quote together." A producer will be in contact within the hour, or maybe by the end of the day. And then from there, what is the context that they had to gather or the goal that they had to accomplish to realistically sell that policy? Then as you think through those next steps, it's simply what was the resolution, what resolved that need, whether it was a sales process or a service process, and how did it close out? So in the example that we've talked about, the resolution is that the producer called and presented the quote to the customer, and the close is hopefully that we bound a policy. So once we've mapped that out, and I would challenge you that as you think through that process, get a piece of paper out and actually write those things down. Those are all of the things that we want to understand and write down. But once we've written those down, our next goal is to take and look at that with a mindset of what things can we do within each of those steps that we can automate to ensure that nothing falls through the cracks. So in that first step, we were thinking about, we probably need to send a text to the customer and say, "Hey, enjoyed talking to you. We're working on getting your quote together. Somebody will be in touch by the end of the day." As you see here on screen, that's an external communication point. And when we're thinking about these touch points, it's really as simple as understanding, is it external or is it internal? That external example we just used, that's something that we need to reach out and actually touch that customer with an automated message. On the internal touch points, those are as simple as just nudges to the team to help effectively move that process along. So at the end of that first stage, when we intake that new customer, maybe that internal touch point is that we send a task to the producer to note that the quote is in the rater and that they need to begin the quoting process with the customer and presenting that quote. When you think about it in this manner, it's really no longer designing automation. You're simply labeling the moments that have already successfully took place within your agency for years. And the final thing before we go into the tool is something that I want to challenge you with to really think about as you're putting any automation system in place. And it's 3 disciplines that really are going to keep the process honest. The first one is going to be probably the most critical, and it's building something that you can live within. As you think about the business that we're in, trust is currency. It doesn't matter if it's with our customers or within our internal teams. We're selling a product that on a perfect day, our customer hopes that they never actually need it. So our goal as we're designing this automation should always keep that in mind to ensure that we do not erode the trust that we're building with our customers due to messaging that is out of place and unrelated. And on the flip side of that, we also want to ensure that our team trusts the systems that we're charging them to use so that they're effective for their workflows and don't work against them. Because once that trust is eroded internally and you no longer use that system, you lose that mechanism that we're leveraging to make these things more efficient and capture the data as it flows along. Once you get that done, I would challenge you that as you build the automations, any touch point that's external, read it out loud. When you write that text message or email as to how it should go out, I want you to read it out loud and run it through a mental filter of, does this sound like me? Our customers, on average, in a business consumer environment, get 120 messages a day from some type of business, whether it be a discount code for a boutique, maybe it's carrier communications about their insurance, or even things as simple as their car dealer texting and asking if they're ready for an oil change. When we send out communications from the agency, we've got to be mindful that anything that leaves our walls has got to sound like it was written by us and it's in our voice that translates to the customer, kind of back to what I said a minute ago, to build the trust that we're focused on building and not erode it from those initial moments where we're sending out these texts. And the final challenge is just to start with something. You know what a successful lead process looks like. You know what a successful service process looks like. Start with a simple one, get a couple of pieces of paper, and let's map out this workflow as it translates throughout and make sure that we get this right on the first one, and it'll become more and more comfortable as we go on through. Now that we've talked about the concepts, we've walked through the process of really taking a piece of paper and capturing what that good day looks like. Let's get to the fun part and actually go through the tool that I'm excited to have put together and bringing to you to use to not only think about the process, but it really serves as to take away that need for a piece of paper and give you a defined workflow that steps you through each step of this process and allows you to understand how to think about it and translate that into AgencyZoom automations. We're going to start right here on the EffiZoom homepage. I'll link everything that I'm going to show you in the description of the video, but once you land on the homepage of EffiZoom.com, the pathway that I'm going to walk you through is going to do two things. I'm going to show you some educational documents that capture the things that we just talked about, and then that will also funnel us into the tool that we talked about. So right up top, you'll click on Educate. You're going to scroll down slightly, and when you get down, you'll see the Good Day. Let's click on this and go into it. And as you scroll down, you'll see it's a lot of the concepts that we just verbally talked through in the video. It's defining the difference in a good day and the other day. It's explaining how you walk that process back. But right here, you'll see try the walk back tool. Once you get into this tool, the very first thing that it's going to ask you, are you an EffiZoom user? This is not going to block you, and we're actually going to skip it. If you want to sign up for EffiZoom or leverage the automation builder that we provide, you're absolutely welcome to do that. So we're going to skip here, and as we go into the first step, we're going to think about it just like we talked through a moment ago. Is this a lead that's came in? Is it an onboarding process? Is it service related? For the example that we'll walk through, we're going to choose that it was a new lead that came in. How did that lead come in, and how did the process actually start? We'll use the phone example. Then who touches it throughout the process? So in the example we just talked through a few minutes ago, a CSR took the initial phone call. A producer is who actually took the quote from the rater and presented it and sold the policy. And then we'll actually showcase here that it goes back to the CSR to potentially collect payment if they're licensed, or maybe they're the ones that are going to process some of that initial documentation. The end of the process, as we discussed a minute ago in its good day example, is going to be that we sell that policy and there's a policy bound. So the next step, this is not super important. It's just naming. So what are we going to call this, which is homeowner lead intake? Then you're going to start the walkback process to think through exactly how this works. So it's going to ask you here how it started. The customer called in and talked to the CSR and requested homeowner's insurance quote. The next question is, who touched the lead first after the initial call, and what was the nature of that contact? So we're going to tell it that the CSR took the call and collected all initial intake about the person and home. Next, it's going to ask us what specific context or data points did the CSR gather to prepare the file for quoting. We're going to tell it that the CSR gathered the personal info on the customer as well as the basic house information, that they also went ahead and gathered the prior coverage information and context as best they could, and the expiration date. From there, once the data was collected, what was the specific actions that the CSR took to move the process forward? So we're going to tell it here that the CSR input the info collected into a paper intake form and also went ahead and input that information into the rater for quoting. How did the CSR hand off this file to the producer? So in this example, we're going to say that they left the paper form on desk. We're going to use a real world example that was pre-automation and just say that they went in and left that intake form on the producer's desk and move into the next stage. So what action did the producer take once they received the paper intake form? We're going to tell it that the producer went into the rater and reviewed and confirmed the quote information, as well as going ahead and reaching out to that customer to present and sell the homeowner's policy. How did the producer hand the file back to the CSR after the customer agreed to quote? So we're still going to think about this in a pre-automation or pre-CRM state. So we're going to say that they returned the form with sold note to the CSR. What specific actions did the CSR take once they received the paper form with the sold note on it? We'll say that they processed the binding paperwork as well as sent e-signed documents to the customer and hit next. And what happened after the customer signed the documents to wrap up the journey? We're going to send them a welcome email. We're going to tell them that we appreciate their business and all the things that we want to do from a customer-facing standpoint that really make the experience with the agency good. At that point, realistically, we've walked all the way through that example from the point of the customer initially calling in, CSR's engagement to intake that information, put it into the rater, go to quote started, then the producer reviewed the quote, presented the quote, sold the policy, moved it back to the CSR, who was then responsible for some of the documentation work, as well as that customer experience onboarding documentation. And let's go ahead and hit continue to the stage proposal. So what we'll get next is going to take maybe 20 or 30 seconds here. And what you'll see on screen is going to look really familiar to you as you think about AgencyZoom. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to break out and understand what stages would that process that we just walked back include, and what are the touch points that we should probably have included within it. So in this case, we got a new quoted and sold stage. This is a really good visual example of taking a successful workflow that lives within your agency today and translating that into a similar scenario to what you would find in AgencyZoom. So within that new stage, there's a producer handoff task that says, hey, producer, we just took in a customer. You need to go look at the quote. Before that actually happens, though, we're going to intake the customer's information, which we talked through with the CSR, taking all the personal and house information, and we're going to send a follow-up text to that customer that says, hey, customer, thanks for calling. We're looking forward to getting a quote for you. Your producer will be in contact by the end of the day. Once that goes into the quoted stage and that's ready for the producer to handle, they're going to have a task to call that customer that says, hey, go present this quote that's ready. The producer follow-up reminder, just in case maybe they didn't initially the deal and bind the policy, it'll be a reminder for that producer to call and follow up. And then also an email that goes out that gives them some more information about the quote and some things there. At the sold stage is where some of the things that we talked about takes place. Realistically, some of these, as you were implementing these automations, could flow into an onboarding sequence in AgencyZoom. I blended the two together in conversation as we worked through this, because at the point of marking it sold, that is where in AgencyZoom, it would then move into onboarding, which takes over an automation sequence in and of its own that you could work through in this same tool by clicking onboarding in that first step that we looked at. One thing that I want to showcase here is that if you come up here and you click the adapt button, you've got the opportunity to go in and actually tell it that you want to do some additional things. We're going to tell it that we want to add a stale text to the new and quoted stages, just in case that lead has gone dark, and hopefully re-trigger that conversation before we have to mark it as lost. So what you'll see here is it's going to tell you the last changes that we added automated re-engagement text touch points to the new and quoted stages to help retrieve an unresponsive lead. And if you scroll down here to the bottom, you'll see a stale lead re-engagement text on both of these. We'll call this done and hit confirm. And we're going to roll into a document that you'll be able to click share on and maybe send it internally to your team. You can get a PDF form of it, or if you so choose, you can build it in the marketplace and come into the EffiZoom environment where our architect can help you build import ready files that you can put right into AgencyZoom that walk through exactly what we talked about. But as you think about what we just went through, you're going to see here where it details out the stages and the actual touch points for each one of the things that we discussed throughout that process. So in the case where that follow-up text goes out, that's going to be an external text. When you hit add automation in AgencyZoom, the very top row is going to include text message. That's exactly what this is showcasing. Going back to what we said in the kind of challenges that I gave you a few minutes ago, one thing that as you manually input those text messages, once you type that into the message field or the message body in AgencyZoom, read that back out loud to yourself. Make sure to run it through that internal mental filter of saying, hey, does this sound like me? If it does, you're fine, save it and let's move on. And then you're going to go into the next stage. So that quoted stage in your pipeline, this is something that lives in AgencyZoom. My goal here with this tool is not to build the automation for you. That's what EffiZoom's architect does. It's a tool to empower you to get your mind around how you think about those workflows. Are they internal or external communications? And what do we really need to carry either that lead or service request from intake through completion without it falling through the cracks? Because on a good day, your agency's been doing this for years. You're successful today for a reason, and it's because you understand the goals that you're trying to accomplish. All we really need to do within AgencyZoom is translate that into a system that helps that go really well when that best producer maybe isn't the one that picked up the call because they're busy, or the CSR that never forgets about a renewal is out on vacation. Your agency still continues to operate in an effective manner, even without those people in play, because you've taken those same workflows that have proven to be successful and translated into systems. This tool is powerful. It's something that we're excited to bring out to you to think through these concepts. We're here to support you. I'm sitting at McWright Insurance Group today, which is where EffiZoom was born out of. We understand these workflows because we live them every single day within the agency, as well as the technology side of our business. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve you. And if we can ever be of support, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.